Gentlemen, welcome to another exciting episode of the Myndful Investor Podcast show. I'm Steve Rozenberg, along with my good friend, Alex Osenenko. Alex, how you doing today, bud?
Good morning. It's morning when we're recording this. It's just another beautiful day. And as Steve, my buddy, always says, you only have so many Wednesdays. Well, I don't know, like 4,000, Steve? What is the count?
4,200 is the average, or 4,400 Wednesdays is the average Wednesdays people have in their life, yes.
Yeah, so if you are tuning in here, we want to make sure we do not waste your next, 30, 45 minutes. We have an awesome guest for you.
Yes.
And the whole theme of the show, we're going to theme it around how to scale your rental business using other people's money. Our guest. I know Matt is your friend, so you can probably give him a due welcome.
Yeah, and before we do that, if you guys are not subscribed to us on iTunes, please do so. Just go to iTunes, subscribe. If you like it, leave us a review. Mention my name, maybe not as much Alex, but you can mention mine. No, just kidding. Mention Alex as well. Also, we do have a Facebook group, the Mastermind Real Estate Investment Club, and so I'm there engaging, conversing. A lot of people from actually all over the country as well as all over the world. Just talking about what is going on in their industry and their locale. And, I try to contribute, give my knowledge, and other people do as well. So yeah, my guest today, very good friend of mine, Mr. the one and only Matt Faircloth. Matt, thanks for being here today, bud.
Thank you so much, Steve and Alex. It's such an honor to be here.
So I had met Matt. We had talked. We met prior, and we had conversations at the Bigger Pockets conference. I think that's where we actually met in person the first time, I believe, right?
I reached out to you when you were on the Bigger Pockets podcast because I was like, this guy, like with the pilot background, and he's got this whole systemization of business, which is not the way I look at things, but I was really inspired by your podcast, and I'm like, I got to hit this guy up. So after you were on the show, I reached out, and we, did like a digital friendship at first, and then met you face to face and at BP, which has been awesome.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't know Matt, I'll give you a quick synopsis of him, and then we'll let Matt kind of dial into what he does. So Matt is, in all intents purposes, he is a master at many tasks. One of them being how to raise capital. So when it comes to understanding raising capital for your business, for your real estate, whether you're just starting or you're hitting that cap and you don't know how to expand past the cap of conventional financing, but we know people do it, we just don't know how to, and maybe some of the challenges that we have when that happens. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Matt, if you don't mind, give everyone just a background about yourself. I know about you, but maybe tell our guests more about who you are, how you got into this, and where you're at now.
Sure. So my name is Matt, of course. My company's called the DeRosa Group, so my wife and I founded the DeRosa Group in 2005 when I quit my day job. So I quit my job in 2005. I was a traveling salesperson for a company called Ingersoll Rand. I sold their, heavy machinery into factory operations and stuff like that. It was a good job, but it wasn't fulfilling. A lot of folks listening can probably relate to that. Is I got paid well, but in some ways it was like golden handcuffs because I made enough to keep me comfortable and happy, but not enough to really thrive. And also I didn't own my time. And so I wanted something different. My girlfriend, now wife, got me to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which really opened up my mind to the possibilities of real estate investing. And so I, bought a house hack, lived in a little 3-bedroom, 1-bath townhome that I bought and rented it out to 2 buddies of mine. That was my first real estate investment. The 2 guys were paying me $500 a month a piece, and my mortgage was $940. So I was making $60 a month and living there for free. And on a good salary coming from my employer at the time, I had very little living expenses, and that enabled me to pay down my debt and pay off credit cards and all that. So that was my first foray into real estate, and that became the proverbial hook in the mouth. Like I was in. I was absolutely like, okay, this is great. This is amazing. And so fast forward to when I quit my job, my wife and I started the DeRosa Group. We started in small real estate investments with our own capital and with some immediate family's money. Bought a few small rentals, single families, duplexes, things like that. And then scaled up, got through the downturn, got through the crash, and that, which is a whole adventure there, and started raising money from other parties and outside of like immediate family in 2011, and we really scaled it from there. Did small deals, and because a lot of people think that if you raise money, you got to buy apartment buildings. That's not what you have to do when you raise capital from people. We did fix and flips with other people's money. We did a lot of rental deals with other people's money. And my first rental deal was 2 single family homes with someone else's money. That was my first rental deal with private capital. And we scaled it from there. And now we own several apartment complexes, an office complex, and we've been able to scale it by using other people's money through win-win relationships with them.
Matt, let me ask you a question before Alex digs in, because I'm sure he has.
No, man, I've been furiously writing.
I know, I saw that. I'm like, I got to jump the gun here on Alex. So, let me ask you this, Matt, because this is something that I think is very important that a lot of our listeners are probably wondering. The mental state that you had to go through from thinking, how do I ask someone for this money? Like, they're going to see right through me and know, Matt, you don't know what you're doing. You've never done this, but you did it. And obviously it worked. And you kept going. How, and I'm sure now you probably have a way to show people how to do that, but I'd like to know, how did you do that? How did you talk yourself into enough confidence to go, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm just going to ask them for the money. Or how did
hype myself up and do a bunch of jumping jacks before the meeting. No, I first of all, I commend you for asking that question, because a lot of folks, when I talk to them, ask me, how did you do it? Let's talk about the doingness of the business, where I commend you for thinking about the mindset first, because the mind conversation, the doingness up here has to happen first before you can go and do it out there in the world. And so I commend you for going there, because that's the first domino to fall, is convincing yourself that you can do this kind of thing. And too many folks are just asking, well, give me the equation. What did you do? What's the algebra? How did you make it happen? That's all great. But if you don't have the courage and the mentality to go out there and do it and convince yourself that you can, you're not going to get much done. So thank you for asking that. I think that it comes from a perspective of seeking to understand first. I'm a huge fan of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People as a book, and 7 Habits talking about seek to understand, then to be understood. And when you think about an investor, a passive investor's perspective, right? Why are they even talking to us? They're talking to us because they may not trust Wall Street with 100% of their wealth. Maybe they want to diversify, or maybe they don't trust Wall Street at all. I'm not saying they should or shouldn't. I'm just saying they might not. And they're looking for somewhere else to park their money. They see real estate as a place to make money. And they'll say things like, geez, I sure wish I could invest in real estate too, but I just don't have the time. Right? Because they believe that real estate investing takes a lot of time. What we as real estate investors can offer them is our time in exchange for their money, right? So invest with me. I'll give you equity, you take equity, or I'll just borrow your money at a rate of return and give you that level of security and give you cash flow on your dollars with collateral, and I'll put the money to work. That's one option. Or partner with me and take an equity slice in that. So I think that you got to get yourself out of the mindset that these private investors are up on a pedestal, because a lot of people put money on a pedestal. And I think that that what we as real estate investors need to do is we are equal to the money, right? What I bring to the table is deals, contacts, my legs, my industry knowledge, my know-how, my people, my team, not just employees as a team. I'm talking about just my realtor, my property manager. Those are my team too, right? I bring all that to the table. What they bring to the table is a check. Both things are of value. So I think the mindset shift that people need to have, Steve, is that we are of value too. And it's just as much value that the money is.
Man, that is so important, because it's like I tell people, nobody knows what you don't know.
Yep.
And when you're having a conversation, if you think that you're a fake and you think that you're a liar, that shows through, right? Yep. When you're having a conversation with someone and you're thinking, I shouldn't be in this conversation, I don't have the ability. But you have to remember, it's like when I've spoken at conferences and you try to cram all this information in your slides because you think everyone needs to know it. And when one of the gentlemen that was mentoring me on how to become a speaker, he says, they don't know what you're going to say next. You realize that, like, they don't know that you are going to cram in all this information, like leave some of it out. And so it's very important because you hit on something. This is a mutually beneficial transaction for both parties. They're not doing you a favor because they go, man, I really like Matt. He seems like a nice guy. I think I'm going to do him a favor.
They're not going to give you like 50 grand or 100 grand because I'm wearing a nice shirt or because I'm a nice guy or because they like your tattoos. I do, but that's not why I'm going to give you 50 grand, you know? Right. So they're giving it because they view you to be a good vehicle of their money. That's what we are. We are conduits of their money to put to work in other facets outside of Wall Street. We are an alternative to Wall Street. And when you start viewing yourself as another angle, like a yes and to their financial planner, that you are a financial planner as well for them, and you have another vehicle you can offer them. Here's Wall Street. Here's another vehicle you can be involved in too. The confidence comes when you realize what you bring to the table.
Man, I love that. I think that just hits home. So, Alex, I know you're chomping at the bit, so I'm going to let you ask away, bud.
Well, I'm just intensely curious person, and Matt scratched my curiosity like the first thing he said. I have multiple questions, but it's more of a timeline. So inspirational element to the show is how, mindset, and also how you did it and the decisions you made at a time that may have been micro failures, but brought you to this where you are today. So I want to unpack a little bit of your journey. And
sure,
a lot of people we interview here, started after the crash. And I'm sitting here and talking to people like, I started in 2012. I started in 2009, 2013. And, since
most
then,
people I talk to started in 2019, man, but that's
it's going high. And I'm like, okay, well, so they've done well. They timed it well, but you started right before the crash. So you saw all that funny money, negam loans and 80-20.
I had those loans, brother,
Yeah, me too. So no income, no asset, they call it, was it no income?
No problem. No money,
problem.
No
You're breathing,
no
you got a deal.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, like by the time it crashed, you probably had a decent portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how'd you navigate through it?
How did I navigate the crash?
Yeah.
Well, so here's what's interesting about the crash, right? And for those that are bearish on the current real estate market today, here's what I saw. And I'm not saying, that first of all, my crystal ball is broken. I can't seem to get it fixed. So I don't know what's going to happen next. But I do know this, that when I was in the crash last time, my rents did not drop a nickel, right? Rents stayed the same. Housing prices went down. And so we had a few fix and flips we were in the middle of that I turned into rentals. And guess what? They still cash flow. I just sold a few of them off just recently at a profit that I developed it's like a 10-year fix and flip, man. I built them out 10 years ago. And then the crash happened. I'm like, I guess I'm going to need to make those rentals. So I did. And we cash flowed them and made a couple $100 a month on each of them, paid the mortgage down, amortized them, right? So, rentals are a good place to be in a crash as long as you buy right. If you're buying something that doesn't make sense right now, I can tell you I fear for you, because there's a chance you're gonna have to hold your breath for several years. If this market slows down, or God forbid has a major hiccup, then you're going to end up holding your breath for a long time with a negative rental. And I knew people, Alex, that bought rentals in like 2006, 7, and 8, that bought them for appreciation.
Yeah.
Right. And now I'm not seeing crazy appreciation now, as we did back then, but stuff was going up. Like single family homes were going up 30 grand every couple of months back then. So people were buying stuff that they were losing on, like they were losing $300 a month, hoping that it would go up in value. That is a speculation. You might as well just take your money to Atlantic City or Vegas at that point. So I don't believe in those kind of deals. But what was interesting, Alex, is the rent stayed up. And so I was able to refi out of the ugly mortgages, the negams and stuff like that we were in based on cash flow over time. So I was able to unwind a lot of them. Now, cap rates change. market shift. So we maybe had to bite the bullet for a little bit, but quickly banking came back online. I mean, in 2009, it was impossible to get a loan. But the banks, they turn around quick. They came back. It's not like they didn't start issuing loans for 10 years. It was like a year that they were out of the market.
They were just more careful with who they did business with.
Oh, they got
if
so
you got
tight.
a good deal, if you got a deal that's making cash flow that's seasoned or that has stabilized rents coming in, then you're still a good bet for them.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
And in terms of getting started, you said you had a comfortable job, you house hacked, then you quit your job in 2005. We talked about that in a previous episode, and it was interesting. There's two sides to it. Like Steve never quit his job. In fact, he has two, and he's an investor as well. So it's kind of interesting to me. Like, what was the cash flow? What was the situation, financial situation, that made you sort of comfortable make that leap?
Well, my wife, so it wasn't like, Alex, we were like, okay, we're now making $5,000 a month off the rental business. So that covers our expenses. Hooray, out of the rat race. I'll quit my job. It wasn't that. And I don't think that it will be that for the majority of people that are listening to this that want to quit their job. It's not going to be like that either. I hate to say that. What we had to do is we had to find a bridge, a cash flow bridge to get us to quitting my job. My bridge was my wife's income, right? So we were dual income, no kids when we first got married, and we intentionally delayed having kids. And not everybody listening can do that. Maybe you already got kids. But we delayed having kids, and this is a crazy concept that might seem 100% foreign to a lot of people listening, but we chose to live below our means. Just because we were making X didn't mean we needed to spend X, is wacky concept. But we spent less than what we earned, and that enabled us to live lean and enabled us to live off of her income, and that enabled me to peel off and start my company. And I think that is how a lot of married couples that are out there, where one spouse wants to quit their job to start investing full time, you might have to find a way to live off of one salary. And not all Americans are doing that these days because they're living at their means. We live below our means, and it enabled us to do that. When I quit my job, Alex, I had 2 rental properties. I was probably making $600 a month off of those. That was nowhere near, and all that money was going back into the business.
Matt, let me ask you this. So this is something I think is, again, I think it's equally more, if not more important. You had mentioned earlier that your wife actually is the one who gave you the Rich Dad Poor Dad book. So when you guys started going down this path, obviously she was at some level, I don't know what, but at some level she was bought into this concept of what you guys were going to do.
She bought him before I was.
She bought him before you were, and she convinced
me in. She was like, what do you think of this? You
got to do this. So how was the alignment family-wise when you were going through these, a lot of self-doubt and probably some self-questioning and some checks on yourself? How was that as you were going through? And I'm curious how that is now, because you guys both have amazingly successful businesses of what you're doing in real estate. How do you guys stay aligned currently as well?
Well, okay. So there's two different questions there, right?
Yes.
So there's staying aligned now, and then staying aligned when times got tough in the beginning, where it was like, geez, and especially like during the downturn, we only expected for us to have to live off of her income for a year or two, and then like the what hit the fan in 2008, just a couple of years after I had quit my job, and so we had to keep holding our breath and she was able to quit her job in 2013. Okay, so it took a while for me to get her out of that, to get through the downturn and to rebuild after the crash. Right. And so there was a lot of, like, let's figure this out together, like, hey, let's do this and stuff like that. And it was only on the foundation of belief that we could make this work and just true transparency to her. It wasn't just like, hey, honey, go quit your job and let me know when I can quit mine. We had like business meetings in our dining room, the two of us, and she would like come in and help me manage it and help me get it off the ground and help me out. Right. And come in and inspire, be my inspirer and be my, smack on the rear end. Hey, get back out there, kiddo, kind of thing, and helped me, and it was like my cheerleader in a lot of ways.
That's awesome.
So now, it's more like we find that to married couples that are looking to do this together, it's really important to have lanes that one spouse stays in and the lane that the other one stays in, because what we found does not work investing with your spouse is to have you two on top of each other, because you don't want to look at your spouse as your boss. You know, it's not the case. Should be your partner, but they should have their field of operation of the company. The other one should have their field of operation of the company. There's going to be mutual trust that the other one's okay in the lane that they're in, and they're going to come and ask you for help, and they're going to have regular communication on what's going on, but that's still their lane. It's not yours, and you're not their boss. You got to let them run with it the way they want to run with it. So that's what we found works. And the only reason we found it works is because we've done it the other way, and we found that it did not work. Working too tightly together.
You guys being aligned is so vital, because I think there's many people, as you and I both know, that becomes a dividing rod because there is no alignment. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, Matt's going to another conference again. He's coming to come back with these crazy ideas. What's he doing? I'm working every day. He's out playing. So I think that's great that you guys were able to establish that, communication, lines of communication and alignment towards the goal. Because again, not many people talk about it, but I think it's something that is very important and vital to be successful, because just because you achieve a certain dollar amount or a certain level of success doesn't ensure you're going to be happy and you feel like, hey, I've made it, when you're doing it by yourself,
Yeah.
So I think that's great.
It's very different. It's very different. And I find most marriages are becoming life partnerships now versus like, we're beyond the Ozzie and Harriet time where it's just like, hey, honey, what time is dinner going to be ready? And I'll be home. And everything like that. We're way beyond that. I mean, most married couples that I know of are really attached at the hip and are moving through life together, including business ventures or work ventures, whatever it is. They're really each other's cheerleaders, each other's support staff through everything, And so I think it makes sense to run businesses like this with your spouse. I mean, you raise kids together, you're managing a household together. Why would you not manage your financial future together?
Yeah. So
Matt, what was your first deal like? You quit your job. So I'm just going back to the timeline and back to the concept of raising money from others to be the steward of that money and grow it for them and, grow yourself. What was your first deal? How'd you put it together? And what kind of ask did you have? And how'd you find people? I know it's a lot of little questions, but how'd you find people with money?
Okay. There's a couple of different ways we can go with it. So and I'm gonna turn that question around because I got two different scenarios that I can outroll here. Right. There's right when I quit my job, I had a family member that owned a piece of real estate free and clear, and I was able to show them how they could put that real estate to work in our business. Right. I did that. That was before I had done many deals. I only had like 2 deals, but this is an immediate family member, right? That liked and trust me because I'm awesome and I'm their family member, not because I'm this, juggernaut real estate investor just yet. Then there's, fast forward a couple of years, the private investor that got in on an equity relationship on a deal with my wife and I. So I can tell both stories. You want me to tell the first one first, about the just right out of the gate?
The immediate family one or paid off real estate is I think very interesting. Yeah, if you don't mind, go through both, because people could end up in both situations.
Well, I think it speaks to the people that are listening. They're like, okay, I want to start investing, but I don't have any money. Like I'm talking about no money. Like, maybe you got a couple of grand to your name. I get it. Well, the angle there, and we did all these things when we first got going, is first and foremost, I'm assuming that folks listening, if you don't have good credit, you got to get that, because if you want to get active in this business and scale a business, you need to have good personal credit. So if you don't, that's your first venture. I put that back on your plate to your listener to go and keep your day job and get your credit score well above 700 points, on all the different companies that run credit, right? You get above 700 across the board, then you can become a full-time active real estate investor. I don't recommend you do, if you've got crummy credit, you're only going to get so far, right? So my wife and I both had good credit. So our first move was to approach a bank and get something that some people call a signature loan. Other banks will call it an unsecured line of credit. And what that is a credit card on steroids, but with a low interest rate. So it's literally, if you've got good credit, you're showing the bank, hey, listen, I have my financial house in order. I can pay my bills. That's what good credit really means. I don't owe anybody that much money. And the money I owe is in good standing. So that's what my credit score says. So the banks were typically willing to loan you unsecured, meaning not attached to real estate, just a line of credit for anywhere between $25,000 to $50,000. We went and got one of those, a signature loan. Okay. And I recommend any business owner should have that. If you get good credit, you need to just have like 50 grand sitting on the shelf with a sign on it that says break glass in case of emergency. Right. We all should have that. I have that in my business. I've had those things for years. Anybody just getting started should go and get a signature loan or an unsecured line of credit from a local small community bank. Okay. That's the first thing.
I got one.
Yeah, we all have one, right? Right. And there's the lesser of these that I'm not a big fan of, but they're out there, and I've had these too, which are 0% interest credit cards. And you can get those too. Those are like little hand grenades, like with the pin pulled out, because they will explode eventually, and the rate goes from 0 to 18.
Right. Yeah.
But
what you asked for.
They're a good way to get going. But I would use them on a flip or a burr strategy that you have a solid exit point on. But that is outlet number 2 for no money out of your own pocket kind of access to capital is 0% interest credit cards. You can get them. They're there. You just got to get the card set up, and then you do a cash advance and get it to work. But like get that card paid off as soon as you can before the rate goes to 18, or it'll sink you. And I had a friend that got a bunch of those and then didn't pay it back in time, and pretty much had to file bankruptcy to get rid of them. Right. So yeah, that's what I said. It's a hand grenade. You're holding a live grenade that you better throw soon, or it's going to go off. Right.
So credit, signature loan, or 0%.
Just know what you're dealing with, man. You're
What's
dealing with a weapon of mass destruction. So you better, but it's okay. It's cash. Just put it to work wisely and know when you're going to pay, know exactly when you're going to pay it back. Those are 2 options. The third thing that we did, and again, I've done all 3 of these. The third thing that we did was I had an immediate family member that had a piece of real estate free and clear. Steve, do you know how many single family homes, what % of single family homes are paid off free and clear in this country?
No, I don't actually.
30%.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah. 30% of primary residences are paid off free and clear.
Wow.
1 in every 3 people owns their home free and clear. It is crazy. And it's some people will tout that. Yeah, I paid the house off because they don't have the monthly expense, but now they've got this enormous piggy bank that could get tapped into.
Sure.
So we had a family member that had their home paid off free and clear. We went to a local bank, and we had that piece of real estate get put up as collateral for a business equity line that we took on. So we got the checkbook for a business equity line of credit with that real estate as collateral. Okay. And that enabled us to, that scaled us huge. Again, that is a weapon of mass destruction too. You cannot take these things lightly. You better make that monthly payment, or guess what? That family member that signed on as your partner to guarantee that loan for you will lose their home.
Right.
Not something worth doing. So you better make sure that it's on the table. It's clear what it is they're getting themselves into, but they're willing to do it. We did it, and it was and it moved forward and enabled us to access a lot of capital to grow our business. So so those all 3 of those things are out there. Be careful who you ask about this kind of thing. Make sure that you explain it to them clearly, and make sure that they know what's in it for them. And you got to structure whatever makes sense. And also explain to them that their home is actually a paid off home is actually a enormous asset that they can put to work to build their wealth. My book, Raising Private Capital, talks about how to have those conversations and how to structure those deals. And they can pick that up on Bigger Pockets, but it's an enormous win-win.
So let's talk about, we've talked about how to position yourself.
Yep.
And how to raise money. With multiple ways to do that. It sounds very doable. I mean, right? It's not like it's accessible to just about everyone. So you got that done. Now let's deployment. First deal these days, 2020, this is February or something like that, or March. I can't tell when it's published, but like, what do you do with that money now? Like in what state do you invest? Like, let's talk about actual deployment.
So we've scaled and grown since then, Alex. I mean, for many, many years, we invested in our own backyard, which was Trenton, New Jersey. And we lived just south of Trenton. And we built a pretty sizable portfolio in Trenton, New Jersey first, with all 3 of those vehicles that I just talked about. And then second, with private investors that came in that wanted to put their money to work. I wish I could invest in real estate, but I just don't have the time kind of people. Right. And so we built that, but we got into larger and larger deals. We had more and more capital showing up to get to work, and just people will find it kind of becomes like a snowball effect, right? Like people tend to, as you do deals, they tell their friends, and they tend to, find out about you. And if you're lucky enough to have like a podcast or a YouTube channel like I do, people find out about you online, or you do work with Bigger Pockets like Steve and I do. People find out about you through these venues because you become, like, hey, that guy's invested in real estate. And so more and more people start to call and start to show up to want to invest with you or want to do work with you, right? So we had to find more ways to put that money to work. And so we had scaled up into larger and larger multi in New Jersey, and then in Pennsylvania, and we just made the next logical step and grew into larger and larger pieces of real estate. So now we're on the apartment building level. We've always been residential landlords, even when we were doing single family home deals. So I understand residential real estate really, really well, because I grew, my path through this business has always been involving residential, even when I was leasing it myself and doing the showings and collecting the rent, doing all that myself. I've just understand this real estate vehicle. So we've just grown it logically into larger and larger real estate. We're not one of the multifamily investors that just, jumped into multifamily because it's hot and sexy right now. We grew into it. And that, so we're doing multifamily.
What would you recommend, Matt, someone starting out today, what is their first deal?
Two choices.
And
they have two choices.
Is it the BRRRR? Is it a fix and flip? What's the first deal?
And you're kind of asking for yourself, right, Alex? You've got not
necessarily.
No,
somebody who fixed their credit, went ahead and got themselves the personal loan you're talking about, the signature loan. Yep. They went ahead and maybe got a couple of the 0% credit cards ready with some little cash. Where did they deploy it?
They have two choices. They can build and scale a business organically like we did, right? So start small, start in your own backyard, unless you live in San Diego or something like that. And you got to start in a market that you know and can scale into, and maybe have resources in that market, people resources that can help you scale a business, right? So that's number one. So scale it up and build your way into larger and larger deals, right? Build a team, don't do everything yourself. Use all the resources that are out there to scale up a business, and start small and work your way up. That's number one. Number two, you can go big, but join a team of people that are already playing big. So find the apartment building buyer in your market or in markets you want to invest in, and say, hey, I can underwrite, or I can raise money, or I can help manage the day-to-day doings of the asset. I can bird dog deals for you, whatever it is. Work your way onto a larger company's team and add value to them, and then become a larger and larger asset to them. And you can work your way onto a team like that that's already doing big deals, right? Those are two choices. So either, hitch your wagon to a big outfit or start your own outfit. But I do believe in starting small. There's too many people out there that have never done a deal that are out there trying to buy 100-unit apartment complexes, and I really fear for them.
Yeah, I agree.
All you have to do is read Steve Rozenberg's book.
Yeah.
You know how to light a dumpster fire, and then literally fail into massive success. So impressive.
Yeah.
And Matt, so if somebody wants to go and look and like get really educated on what you just discussed, you mentioned your book. Can you say what that is again?
Sure. It's called Raising Private Capital. And make sure you type it in just like that, because there's a copycat book out there, but this one's called Raising Private Capital. This one's published by Bigger Pockets. And that it's a great, phenomenal book. And it's one that I'm very proud of, and we put a lot of hard work into it. It's an Amazon bestseller. You can buy it on Amazon, or you can pick it up on Bigger Pockets. And if you pick it up on Bigger Pockets, there's a ton of additional bonus information. It's a few more dollars, literally, but there's a ton of bonuses. So it's worth buying it on biggerpockets.com.
For sure. Bigger Pockets is an awesome community. I want to say thank you, Matt. This was a very interesting education. Like every episode is just a journey, but there's some consistency, Steve, that I'm gathering through the guests. And I think living below the means is sort of like kind of stays constant. Like, hey, you want to go be spending? That's not, that's your choice, but that's anti-investment strategy. Because that cash is not deployed, it's burned.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I can tell you.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Matt.
I live in a phenomenal home and I've got a great car, but it took me a lot of time to build up the resources to buy those doodads for myself. Too many people, because of access to credit or because it's just so easy to get these things now, are buying the things they want now instead of practicing a little bit of delayed gratification as I did. And, drove a beat up car and lived in a house that was below their means for a little bit so they could have really even beyond what they want on the long term. Yeah.
The famous quote I remember from Damon John is that the overnight success is 15 years in the making.
Yep.
That's the best way I could put it. I mean, to me, that truly is the story. And so,
fact.
Matt, again, I know you got tons of stuff going on. I just always enjoy talking to you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being on the show today and imparting your wisdom. And if people want to get a hold of you, I know obviously you and I do stuff on Bigger Pockets together, but if they want to get a hold and reach out to you more about the financing and all I mean, you got so much stuff going on. How do they do that?
Too cool. A lot of cool stuff. We've got education programs. We've got something called DeRosa Insiders that they can get an inside look on the day-to-day of a real estate company. All that's available at DeRosaGroup.com, 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 or they can check out my thriving YouTube channel at youtube.com/DeRosa Group, and they can watch an interview with an awesome dude named Steve Rozenberg.
That's right.
That was on my YouTube channel recently, which is about to get launched in a couple of weeks. My guess is when this episode gets launched, that interview with Steve will get launched, and Steve and I had a phenomenal conversation on YouTube. You guys have to check that out after you listen to this podcast.
Super awesome. Well, those of you who are listening, Mynd is a property management company. You got a property. We're in 15 markets. Would love to get a chance to help you manage it and make the most out of your asset. And if you want to join our Real Estate Investment Club on Facebook, we'd love to have you there. And until next time, good luck and have a great day.
Thanks for everyone. We'll see you next time.